Okay, ladies and gentlemen, good evening and welcome to the OEB debate. You'll see we've got a bar there, so anybody who hasn't taken advantage of that, who wants to, please do during the debate. It helps to perhaps lubricate the engine of debate. My name is Harold Ellison, and I'm basically a boring British guy. Which is why I don't know why I'm here chairing a debate on fun. I'm probably the last person who should be here doing that. But once upon a time in another life, I was the Member of Parliament for England's fun capital, which is Blackpool, which I recommend. Maybe we'll have an online educa in Blackpool, but it's a fantastic tourist resort, so I urge you all to go to visit Blackpool. The OEB debate is a great institution. I think we've been going for at least 10 years now doing this debate, and we always have fun in it, and tonight is no exception, because this is a subject on which everybody's got an opinion, and I would love to give you my opinion, but I'm the chairman and I've got to remain neutral. It's certainly a subject that I've got plenty of opinions on. And I could tell you lots of stories about teachers that I've had and their effect on my education and on my life in all sorts of ways. But I think if I even began to talk about it, it would give you a clue about my own personal opinions, and I can't do that. But what I can do is introduce you to our speakers for this debate, which we hold in a kind of parliamentary format. So we've got two speakers for the proposition, two speakers for the motion, and two speakers against the motion. And they're each going to speak for about 10 minutes, and then I'm going to open up the discussion to you and to let you make a short contribution or ask a question or sing a song, do a little dance, whatever you feel helps you to make your point in whatever way you want to do. Then I will ask one speaker from each side to sum up their argument, and then we'll put the proposition to a vote. So the motion for debate tonight is: this House believes all learning experiences should be fun. And there's a lot in that motion. As you see, each of those words perhaps has some, without wanting to give anybody too much of a clue, because I'll leave it to the proposition to set out what they have to say, but I think each of those words in a way is quite interesting. Our first speaker, who is going to propose the motion, is Eliot Maisy, and Eliot is an international analyst, experimenter, author and advocate for learning around the world. He's the editor of Learning Trends. He heads the Maisy Centre, and he leads the Learning Consortium. He's a very, very well-known figure in the business, and I'm sure many of you saw him earlier on the spotlight stage yesterday. So it's a great pleasure to welcome Eliot and to ask him to propose the motion that this House believes all learning experiences should be fun.
Well, thank you. And I would sit down, but I'm more fun when I stand up. Because, in fact, at the end of the day, fun is a choice. Fun is a choice. Now, if I had my druthers, I would have a slide where you could, as a learner, go, let's go fun. Or, that's not my mood, okay? And you could zoom it down the other direction. Now, why do I talk about fun being a choice? Because there are two sides of fun. You've all been in a speech where you know the speaker before going online purchased 5 jokes to tell an audience. And they're horrible jokes. The speaker thought she or he was being fun, but fun didn't happen. Because fun's not what I project to you. Fun is your own experience of that. Now, why do I believe that all learning experiences should be fun? A simple word. Ha ha. ha, ha. Do me a favor, for 5 seconds, with the person sitting next to you, remove the first letter and tell me what it says. Ha, ha, minus the first letter. Turn to your neighbor. Ah, did you hear that? Ha, ha, it became what? Aha. In fact, the reason that we want to have all learning be fun, not to make it funny, but to say what? You heard that word? Aha. Our goal as learning producers, our goal as learning designers, our goal as teachers, our goal as the person sitting next to you at work who's going to help you figure out how to get the damn thing on. Our goal in the end is to create and lubricate to the point of aha. Now, when we talk about fun, don't think it's that's not fun. Any of you ever see Apollo Ono, a ice skater who went around the ring? I had an opportunity to interview Apollo Ono, speed skater, Olympic, and I said to him, was it fun to go around that rink at that speed? He goes, amazing. I said, did you laugh? He said, I didn't want to die. So we get trapped if we think that fun means laughter. It doesn't. Fun means engagement. Fun means it gets to you inside. Fun means that it touches you in some ways. Some of you were there yesterday when I put down that wonderful, wonderful tool called PowerPoint. I had the opportunity to have dinner with Bill, Melinda Gates, Steve Jobs, and Steve Case at a Wall Street Journal event many decades ago. And I was the learning guy there. And at another table, because they weren't yet big enough, at the kids' table were the guys from Google. So Melinda Gates turns to me and says, Eliot, you're the learning guy. What's the best learning tool in the world? Now remember, she's the woman who invented, well, before she started to date Bill, the paper clip in Office, okay? I know she wants me to say PowerPoint. I know, I could see her lips going, PowerPoint. And it was a moment of truth to power, where I looked at her and I said, you see that table over there? The best learning tool in the world is Google. And I ducked. And Bill jumped to her defense and said, what's wrong with PowerPoint? I said, it's a wonderful sleep aid. And he laughed. And you know why he laughed? Because that's what his ha-ha was saying. Aha. In fact, he knows that PowerPoint was neutral until you load up so much crap in it, it turns the person off. Our goal in saying that all learning should be fun is really simple. Number one, all learning should be the word that our great honorable MP here said. All learning should be an experience. We should create it, not that they listen to it, but they experience it. Number two, all learning should be personal. Because you don't laugh at something until it's personal. Once I tell a joke and it's like it gets you, that's when you laugh. And all learning at some level should linger inside of you. And for me, the goal of fun is to get out of the business to think that we in the world of learning are in the publishing industry. We are not in the publishing industry. Learning is not about creating a PDF. Learning is about implementing change. And if our goal is to create something that helps somebody to be better with cybersecurity, with delegation, with safety or the like, I want to touch them. You talked about teachers you had. Think back to the teachers that were impactful in your life. They might not have been funny. Dr. Richard Rayberg from the State University of New York at Binghamton was not funny when he flunked me in statistics. Do you know why he flunked me in statistics? I got a B. He said the most dangerous thing in the world is a person who got a B in statistics. So you got an A or you flunked. He had fun with me at the expense of failing me in a course. I will tell you, I went back and took the course again. I had 20 professors to pick. Which one do you think I picked? Dr. Richard Rayberg. Why? Because he felt that learning should be personal, impactful, and have that incredible moment of aha. Now, finally, I want to say, I could argue, and there'd be many ways to argue, that there are times in which we probably don't want to have a lot of fun because it is very serious. But I did some work recently with a United States group that does hospice training, where literally family members are helping another family person in their last days of life on their way to death. Do you want to know what the trainer there said? Let's figure out a way how to have as much fun as possible in the instruction of how to take care of your one before they go. You all heard about former President George Bush, who just passed away. And it was really interesting to hear the comments that people were making to him in his deathbed. They were not solemn. They were about humor and fun. I would argue that at the end of the day, if I have the gift of being a teacher, a designer, a subject matter expert, I'm going to choose, if possible, to move the needle over into the area, that very important area where ha-ha becomes aha. It's not comedy, it's not cartoons, it's not laughter, but it's reaching people with a story that they will remember, that will touch them, that will be repeated, that they will be shared with others. And finally, on a personal level, I want you to think about it. In the old days, when we wanted to post something for people to read, we just put text in. And I remember hearing, don't send an email around with a picture in it, because it won't feel serious. If you're now posting something online in Twitter, in LinkedIn, on Facebook or the like, and you don't have a picture in it, you probably are going to be perceived that's not as engaging. Why? Because at the end of the day, we want to use every tool that we can to make sure that our stories, that our instruction, that our coaching, that our feedback, that our support for learning takes that word ha-ha, and if you take ha-ha and you remove the H, what do you get? I yield to my partners.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that, Eliot. We were talking this morning about replacing jobs, I think, with technology, and I've realized that I'm very slow at getting to grips with technology, but I've realized that this little machine in front of us tells us exactly how much time we've got, and it ticks down, and Eliot was bang on time at 10 minutes, so well done for doing that. I'm now going to call our next speaker, who is Alex Beard, who's an author and director at Teach for All in the UK. He's also a writer and commentator who's written for several newspapers, including The Independent, The Financial Times, and Wired magazine. And his book, Natural Born Learners, is a user's guide to transforming learning in the 21st century. It takes readers on a dazzling global tour into the future of education from Silicon Valley to Seoul. So, Alex, over to you.
Thank you. So, I'd like to begin by saying that I believe in experiential learning, and so I'm going to be as boring and informative as possible so that you can learn whilst having no fun at all. So I want to share 4 points with you, which will hopefully convince you why all learning experiences don't need to be fun, although, of course, many can be. The first is that hard work works. And I learned this lesson on the journey that I took to write my book, Natural Born Learners. And I had looked at the research of the psychologist Ben Bloom, who studied 120 creative geniuses in a variety of fields, including sculpture, neuroscience, swimming, maths. And he found that something that we all now know, that creative genius doesn't result from some divinely ordained aptitude, but it comes from long hours of hard work. The famous 10,000 hours. And to find out what this looked like, I went to South Korea to see what the capacity of our minds was for learning if we really put them to the test. And so I went on this warm Thursday morning in November. I stood outside a concrete school hall in Songdo Future City on the outskirts of Seoul, as all across the country, hundreds of thousands of South Korean teenagers were sitting down to the 8 grueling hours of the Sunyung, which is an exam that takes place on a single day each year, and it's considered the world's toughest. So afterwards, leavers get a rank nationally, which decides their university entry, their whole future, their health, wealth, and happiness. And I was there to hear the story of Seung-bin Lee, who was this mild-mannered, softly-spoken 17-year-old boy who at that moment was sitting inside the exam hall, his hands shaking, about to get started with the exam. And the country was exam crazy. So earlier that morning, police on motorcycles had lined the streets, ready to accompany latecomers to the exam hall. The papers for weeks before had run articles about what you should wear and what you should eat for optimal performance in the exam. During the 45 minutes of the English listening exam, all flights in the country were grounded so as not to affect the kids' concentration. So Korean learning was all about marginal gains. Seung-bin even confided to me that during the exam, he had been so worried about overheating and that affecting his performance that he'd gone to the bathroom and removed his underpants. Which begs the question of what you do with a pair of underpants for the rest of an exam. So it was freaky, it was extreme, but Korea does show us the power of learning on our minds. 70 years ago, Korea was broke coming out of the Korean War. 4 in 5 Koreans were illiterate. Today, it's a high-tech economy, home to companies like Samsung, Hyundai, has the highest proportion of university graduates to population of any country in the world. And when I spoke to a former education minister there, he told me, we have no resources here, just our minds and hard work. So we know that hard work leads to learning, but I'm not going to say that we shouldn't have fun. So before I left, Seung-bin showed me his revision timetable. For the 3 years leading up to this Sunyung exam, he'd worked 14 hours a day, 5 days a week, and then a relatively restrained 12 hours a day on both Saturday and Sundays to prepare. And Korea is in the grip of a mental health crisis. So he told me actually before I left that all he could think of to do to combat the stress he felt was to work even harder. So hard work results in great learning, but, and I want to go back to the fun here, Ben Bloom's research also revealed that there's an equally crucial and less celebrated factor in becoming a genius. Before you do all that hard work, you need to fall in love with your subject, to play, to experiment. He calls this the romance stage, where you have fun. So I want to talk about this idea of having fun. I think it's a big part of learning. I just don't think it's everything. So first of all, there's one idea I want to share with you. There are 3 particular ones that I want to introduce you to. The first one is that the idea that engagement is not the same as learning. So I think having fun is a way of engaging kids. I did this in my own classroom as a teacher. I used word searches at the beginning of the class to get the kids to behave themselves, and it was like catnip. It was incredible. They would sit down as soon as they came into the classroom, spend 5-10 minutes. I could hardly tear them away from doing these word searches. But unfortunately, whilst they were doing the word searches, it occurred to me that they weren't learning anything, so they were having fun without learning. And I think that we risk this idea of engagement being the most important thing and having fun the most important thing, influencing the way we think, especially in the realm of education technology. So I went to Singularity University, where Peter Diamandis, who'd set it up, had asked why learning couldn't be more like Angry Birds. He wanted it to be addictive and gamified. And I think that when I went there, I went to Singularity University and I visited a place they called the Classroom, where they had lots of exciting bits of technology, expecting to have my mind blown. But then I realized there was a robot, there was a VR environment where you went on with a roller coaster, there were some toys that you could play with. And I realized all of these things were incredibly fun, but very few of them had anything to do with learning at all. And I think that there's an important thing here which psychologists are beginning to show, which is that it appears that our brains are specially designed to avoid thinking where possible. If we can get away with not thinking, we will. So if we're having fun living in the moment, we're not really learning anything. And there's a great experiment called the paradox of the guided user done by a Belgian psychologist, which tested this out. And he had two experimental conditions. One where people had to do an online task with a computer helper, and another one where they had to do an online task without any help. Now, with the computer helper, people get better at that task much more quickly. But when you take the helper away, it turns out they don't know how to do the task. So as it gets harder, they can't do it. In the first condition, people struggle at the beginning, and it's hard for them to do it. But when they get to higher levels or more difficult bits of learning, they're able to do it because they've put the cognitive architecture down in their brains. And so there's a sense that learning isn't about engagement, it's about more than that. Learning really requires struggle. And I don't think that struggle can always be fun. So my third point is that we need to sacrifice small fun in order to have big fun. And this talks a bit what Eliot was talking about his speed skater. Yes, of course, the speed skater is having a great time skating around the rink, because that's at the end of many years of hard training and practice and long work. I don't believe that when that speed skater is in the gym doing weightlifting or is training in their technique, that every moment they're doing that learning is going to be fun for them. And I saw this in play at the MIT Media Lab. So the MIT Media Lab, for people that don't know, is a sort of hotbed of creativity and fun. It's pretty amazing. Many of the inventions that we use today have come out of there. So touchscreens were invented there, GPS, the ink in Kindles, Guitar Hero, if you wanted to have real evidence that they like fun. And everything there is done in groups, and it's done through play. So they have these big cross-disciplinary projects. The success criteria they have for those projects is, does it have a real-world value? Does it work? And is it magic? And the person that set this up is a guy called Mitch Resnick, who you may know, who invented Scratch, and he runs a group there called the Lifelong Kindergarten. And they have 4 Ps of creative learning. Purpose, you have to find your purpose. Projects, you should work on those. Peers, you should work with others. And play. Like, play is really crucial to what they're doing. But even he, when I said to him, you know, does all learning need to be fun? He said, no, like the thing that people don't understand about creative learning is that it's as rigorous as any other form of learning. We need to get that idea out there into the world. So yes, you want to have the opportunity to explore and play and to have fun, and that's central to the ethos of the Media Lab. But you also have to do something which he called exploit, which is to do with convergent thinking, where you're crafting, redrafting, getting things wrong, you know, working painstakingly through problems. And that's not, he said, always fun. And that fits with this idea of Ben Bloom's geniuses again. And so then, finally, just to finish, my third point here is that I think there's more to being human than just having fun. So although Eliot would like us to be having fun all the time, if you like, he's a dictator of fun, I think that being... I think that you know, being human is about more than having fun. So I went to this other classroom of a Finnish teacher called Pekka Peura. I went to Finland because Finland is the happiest, most creative country. We all know this by many measures, UN surveys, PISA studies, and so on. And I went to his classroom and watched him at work. And so at the beginning of his class, this guy, he flashed up a question on his interactive whiteboard, then had his students beam in answers, which he then displayed in a bar chart, A, B, C, D, or E. He then didn't tell them the answer, but asked them to turn and talk to each other. What answer had they given? Why had they given that answer? And then he got them to beam in their answers for a second time, and he put this bar chart up, and it had changed significantly. The kids had taught each other. So he had sort of a classic flipped classroom where he would give all the materials to the kids, the tests, the answers to the tests, and then he saw his role as a teacher as being one of coaching kids on their ability to learn individually and together, giving them the competencies they'd need to thrive later on in life. He'd studied even how Google creates its most successful teams and was using those practices in his classroom. And he had a list of competencies that he wanted those kids to develop. They included things like imagination and creativity, but they also included things like perseverance and cooperation and hard work and critical thinking. And I don't think that all of those things fall under the category of fun. So to summarize, I think that all learning can't be fun. I think that fun is a core part of much of what we do to learn. But we need to remember also, first of all, that hard work works. that engagement is not the same as learning, that you have to sacrifice small fun to have big fun, and finally, that there's more to being human than having fun. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Alex, for that. So we've had our two opening speeches, one for the proposition and one for the opposition, and I'm now going to call on our next speaker who will speak in favour of the motion, and he is Benjamin Dockstader, who's a blogger and educator, and he teaches middle school English language arts at the International School of Brussels in Belgium, where he's also a coordinator of the personal learning programme. And he also blogs about the intersection of politics and pedagogy. Benjamin.
I also teach a cooking class with 20 students who have big knives and frying pans, besides teaching English. So I think that's another whole different kind of fun that I'll talk about. I think learning has the potential to be subversive, and that's fun, and that's a different route into this. I think that we're in a dangerous time where there is a strong call for students to have more grit and more resilience, and often that's put on students who have been given the least by the education system and by the broader political system. So I think calling for that hardening damages most those who've already been damaged by the system. It's interesting that South Korea was brought up. Any fans out there of Ha-Joon Chang's work on capitalism? He looks at back in 1960, South Korea had a literacy rate 20% below Argentina. And they didn't bring up their economic success through the kind of hard work that's the stereotype. They brought it about through other economic reforms rather than hard work and education leading the way. So I think we're wrong to sort of hang the economic future of our countries on something like the hard work and grit of our students. I also think we have to ask, do we want to create that kind of testing culture? Is that the kind of culture we want to have in our schools? And increasingly it is in different places, in the US, in the UK. And the problem with that is it sets up a system guaranteed to exclude many people who aren't going to make it to the top. And I think that's a serious problem for fun at school. How can you have fun going to school every day if you know that the system has been designed to exclude people? My big question for people who oppose fun in school is, why are you so afraid of youth having fun? I think the opposition to fun comes from a conservative anti-youth movement that's often grounded in deficit models, where the main call is that kids need to start taking more responsibility. They need to start stepping up. And that views citizenship through a very narrow lens of character, as opposed to more active forms of citizenship. And in fact, taking away the opportunity for fun is one more opportunity taken away from kids who haven't been given enough opportunities. Along this argument, I see fun as a social kind of alternative in schools to a kind of privatized suffering that has become the norm, where in our economy, in our societies, we are encouraged to suffer alone and then to somehow counteract that with something like mindfulness or grit and then show up and do our jobs. I think fun is a social kind of alternative to that private suffering. In connection with this, you're not going to have fun if you adopt a lot of the different tech models that are coming into schools that are mostly about surveillance, where students are treated as potential suspects all the time. I think that's a mindset that we as teachers also need to get over for students to be having fun, that we need to welcome them into our classrooms as full people, as people who we don't see as a deficit that needs to be fixed, but who bring amazing things with them. I think if we get to that place and change our attitudes, classrooms will be a place of fun and opportunity. The other main barrier to seeing how schools could be fun is we're stuck in a value-added kind of model of education, where we're looking at numbers, we're looking at test scores, we're looking at raising those. But we can't really capture the well-being and inner lives of our students through those kinds of models. I think they're the wrong models to capture that by. So we have to be willing to think outside of that. Last in this, I'm not going to take my full 10 minutes. Last, and I think this is the crucial part of it, is going back to this idea of hard fun for any Seymour Papert fans out there. That fun isn't like the roller coaster. Fun doesn't mean you just get whatever you want when you want it. Fun is a longer experience that lasts over time. I think that relies on us creating the right kind of cultural conditions in our classrooms. And I want to go back to this idea of fun being subversive. I teach English literature, and I have students who show up excited all the time to be reading Shakespeare. Because Shakespeare is damn fun if you actually read what he's saying. Take apart his sonnets and look what he's actually talking about, which you'd probably get fired for in most American public schools. If you, if you get into that stuff, learning is amazingly fun when you take it from that subversive angle. And I think that subversive angle also relates to students being able to challenge the power structures in education. They walk into buildings where they have very little control of their lives day in and day out. I have a huge sign in my classroom that tells kids, don't ask me to go to the bathroom. And I still have kids asking me to go to the bathroom because that's the way that they are socialized in schools. And if we run them that way, there is little opportunity for fun. And so when you talk about hard work, about people who are going to choose to struggle outside of being compelled to struggle through a testing regime, I think we need to ask, why do people make that choice to do that hard work? I think that's where fun comes back into the picture. If you look at people who are experts and who do work hard, who put in all those thousands of hours doing things like memorizing positions on a chessboard to be the best chess player, I think if you look into why are they doing that, that answer comes down to some form of hard fun. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for that, Benjamin. Our final panelist, opening speaker, is Patty Shank, who is a learning designer, an analyst, an author, and she's the president of Learning Peaks in the USA. She's written, co-authored or edited numerous learning books and e-books, and she was an award-winning contributing editor for Online Learning magazine and the research director for the e-Learning Guild. Patty.
Hi, I'm going to stay right here because there's a really good chance if I get behind the podium, I will disappear. So, I'm on the opposition, obviously, and I want to tell you why. And it's based on what I do and what I know as an educational researcher. About a year ago, my dentist tells me after taking x-rays that I needed to be in braces. And I had an incredulous look on my face at that time. It's like, I'm not a child. I don't need braces. I had braces when I was young, and I'm not doing that again. And then he did something that was interesting. He showed me my x-rays, and then he pulled out a journal article from a dental journal showing changes in the jaw in adulthood. And after a few minutes, he had me at research. And I read his research, I read his article, and I decided, he's right. I need braces, and so I have them, again, at my age. There's a simple but not easy way to tell what works in the world in most domains. It's true in medicine, which I'll talk about more in a moment because that's my background. It's true in nutrition. It's true in learning. And the way we tell what works is by evaluating the preponderance of research in an area to determine what works. Now, in some cases, what works is highly variable, but in learning research, not so variable. It's variable according to things you and I know a lot about, such as the prior experience of our participants. People often complain that research isn't clear, is hard to read, and besides which, you can find a research study that will prove anything. But that's the point that proves what I'm saying. We're not looking for the odd research study. We're looking for the research that tells us what's the best way to help people remember things that are not fun, like remembering your times tables. How many of you had to memorize times tables? Well, I have an interesting story. I'm talking to somebody here a few days ago, and they remember their times tables, and I don't. That's because I fought it. And I don't know what 8 times 6 is. I can probably get within 10, but I think it's excellent. But this person knows their times tables because they have done the work needed, what research says is needed, to keep that at mind. I have not. I have, by the way, I can do percents in my head because that's required for shopping. So I'm very good at 20% off. When you analyze research, you start to see themes and patterns. And those themes and patterns tell you what the research tends to show and in what situations. And so when I say preponderance of research, that means a great deal of analysis of what the research is saying and whether that research has been replicated. And if it's been replicated, did it show the same thing or something different? That's what people who do research and people like myself who truly enjoy explaining what the research says need to do to tell you what the research says. So the next point is, what is fun anyway, and what is engagement? We have no definitions for those things, and here's what I can tell you. Research does not talk about the correlation between engagement and fun, and here's a problem with engagement. Engagement can't be measured directly. It can be measured by proxy, which means we use something else to tell us if it's engaging. The last research study I studied on video, for example, used the proxy of how much time the person spent watching the video. Here's the problem. That proxy is a problem. The problem with that proxy is we don't actually know if people were watching it or whether it was on. Okay, so we can only use proxies for fun and for engagement, and none of the research even uses that. Fun implies that it's enjoyable. Well, Dr. K. Anders Ericsson, a Swedish psychologist who is a well-known expert on expertise and skill, says that higher levels of skill and performance are often, very often, most often due to a great deal of hard work over long periods of time. For example, speed skaters, figure skaters, anyone who wants to get really good at something hard. And I'll bring that down to our level in just a moment. So learning's often difficult. To get from adequate to expert requires a level of dedication and practice, 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 practice that isn't fun. The speed skater is not happy getting up at 3 o'clock in the morning every single day to go to a cold rink when they want to be in bed where it's warm. But they do it because they want to be the best. Some of you, I know, do things to learn your own craft that at the moment aren't fun, but you know the outcome will be fun. And that's the hard, doing the hard work so you can have big fun. So one of the groups that I work with commonly is medical educators. And I've talked to some of their students, and I've talked to them about what it takes to become a doctor. And I have a few things that they told me. One is they told me it takes a very long time. And you don't know where you're going to be at the end of that long time. And so, for example, one young woman said to me, I decided to become a doctor when I was 25 years old, except I majored in art, which meant I had to go back and do my undergraduate work all over again to take all the science and math. And after doing that, basically 2 bachelor's degrees, there was absolutely no guarantee she would get into medical school. And then the final thing she said to me is, Patty, if I got into medical schools, it was another 10 to 15 years. So It takes a long time, and numerous of those folks told me how challenging it was. The math and the science were grueling, but that wasn't the hardest part. The hardest part was the barrage of information coming at them every single day that had to be memorized. Now, I know it's in fashion to say, we don't need to memorize things, we can Google them. Do you want your dentist Googling how to give you a Novocaine shot? No, you don't. So what she said to me is, in order to be able to understand the thing I was going to learn on Thursday, I had to memorize what I was learning on Tuesday so that I understood the concepts and I understood the terms. It's exhausting. The difficulty of gaining deep skill and expertise is true in many professions. Think of sports. Think of Tiger Woods and Serena Williams and the work that goes into getting at that level. But even getting at a modestly expert level requires tons of work, not all of which is fun. In fact, Dr. Erickson shows us that a great deal of what's required to get to any level of expertise is difficult and hard. So even learning things like Microsoft Excel pivot tables, I had to grit my teeth and do it over and over. I don't know, anybody have that same experience? It's like, this makes no sense to me, until it made sense. Definitely not fun. If you're learning a new authoring tool in order to create online learning, in order to do complex interactions, there's little fun to that. But the end result is worth it, and you know that. Eliot was talking about working with hospice patients. I did a bunch of training with hospice workers on how to design expertise for the families, how to design materials for the families of hospice patients, and learning how to write for instruction, which is one of the things that I write on, was very difficult for them because they know technical writing as an RN, as a nurse, as a doctor. Writing for understanding, a whole nother thing, and it was difficult. People who have high levels of expertise get there through practice, determination, difficulties over long periods of time. Here's what the preponderance of research tells us about deep expertise and deep learning. While learning can be fun, and it should be fun when it can be fun, learning is often hard, demanding, tiring, and it often includes getting stuck, feeling stupid, failing, learning from failure, misunderstandings that have to be fixed. I'll end with this. A noted learning researcher, Robert Bjork, has a name for what I've just been talking about. And it's perfect, and it's the bottom line. He calls it desirable difficulties. And what that means is that the tactics needed to learn, remember, and to apply require a great deal of effort, both on your part for teaching and the learner's part on learning. So my bottom line is, while we should make it fun when we can, the most important thing you and I can do to help people learn for deep skill, work skills, and remaining viable in a workplace where skills are changing all the time, is to do what works and put fun next.
Thank you very much, Patty, and thank you to all our opening speakers for setting out the arguments on both sides very clearly. It's now over to you, ladies and gentlemen. So if you would like to make a short contribution or ask a question, if you ask a question, I'll have to put it to both sides. or tell us about your experience, whether you've found learning fun or not, then please put your hand up. And I can just about see to the back of the back of the hall, although these lights are very bright, so you might have to wave your hands about a bit if you're right at the back. And can you just wait till the microphone gets to you? So don't start speaking till the microphone reaches you. Yeah, first contribution over here.
I was just in a session with 6 high school German students, which I would say are much smarter than American college students. And I would make, which is where I teach, and I would make a crime and generalize on that, because I asked them a question about learning. And this is what they said, that they learn nothing, that the only thing they care about is to get the score which will get them at the higher level, to the university. And I asked them if they can recall anything that they've learned last semester and that they had high grade. They said absolutely nothing. As soon as they pass, they forget everything. So maybe we are delusional about what we're trying to do. And how does fun or not fun fit into all that?
Okay, would you like to answer that now, or do you want to do it in your summing up? It's up to you. Have a go now.
Well, my answer is that they didn't learn because the tactics we know from learning research that helps people deeply learn, process, and be able to use what they learn weren't followed. And they're typically not followed in, I work in workplace learning, typically not followed there either. If we're teaching to the test, then we're not teaching for application.
I think one of the big mistakes, and I heard it even in your comment about me, is that people who oppose fun are angry. I mean, I stopped watching CNN about 2 years ago when things changed at the White House in America. But it's this concept of anger, okay? I actually think there's nothing contradictory about having fun and working hard and doing diligence. But are you in an environment in which you're excited to be there? The reason that that student isn't interested in the outcome is they were assigned to be in that class. They never bought into or were brought around to what it would achieve for them, what the outcome of it would achieve for them. And so I think what we need to think about in this process is if we're going to build schools, and I'm not sure that tomorrow's school looks anything like our today's school does. It's going to have to be in a situation in which knowledge is different, technology is different. For instance, I don't want my dentist to memorize how to give me a Novocaine shot. I would like it to be based on a CAT scan of where my ideal nerve ending is, what my allergy to drugs are, what my pain threshold is, what my level there. In other words, why are we building everything to a memorization level if in fact we're going to live in a bigger data world, be connected? And how do we build a classroom or a class environment for those students that isn't about just getting the grade, but is really about getting them engaged in life, in an outcome, in a process? And I really believe that what we need to do is not have schools run by 68-year-olds like I am, but to really engage, as you were saying, the youngest and different range of populations to look at ways we can engage. Educational research is just fine, but the reality is that most people sleep through most of our learning. Most people don't engage in the outcomes of what we're doing. Most e-learning is a narcotic in that sense. And what we need to do instead is to figure out how do we really engage people for the new age of knowledge, technology, and skills that will change so fast, that when you graduate, you're going to need to have a different set of skills that won't just have a half-life of four years in that.
Okay, thanks for that. Yeah, Michelle.
I just want to ask everybody in the room to put their hands up if they've learned something new in the last year. Wow, that's amazing. So was all your learning experience fun? Because I know from my own experience that when I learned to become Pilates instructor, completely different from what I do in my day job, it was the best learning I had was when I was in tears because I couldn't get it right and I was being shouted at by a pretty bad teacher actually. But I didn't find that fun. But what I found fun was my ability to do it afterwards. So it's that word all. It's not all learning experiences. I think if they're all fun, then you're not learning. I really believe that actually it's some learning experience should be fun. If some of them aren't fun, then you're not going to learn. But it's not all, because if you're not stuck and you don't have a problem, then I don't think you're learning at all.
Thank you. Yeah, there's a lady at the back there. I think. Which one? Just by the wall there at the back. Harold. No, a lady. He's definitely not a lady. His name's Herman, and he's not a lady. He's a very nice gentleman, but he's not a lady. Right. No, right at the back. The lady with her hand up there. Keep going. No. Behind you. Yeah. We're never going to get
cool.
that.
Would you agree that this motion is more applicable to economies or organizations?
Can you put the microphone?
Oh, yeah. Would you agree that this motion is more applicable to the advanced economies or organizations which should pay more attention to the needs of the individual because they need to address these needs than to economies or organizations such as, say, South Korea or Poland, where I come from, which need to catch up, and they just do not have enough time for all the fun because they need to, because they're lagging behind.
Okay. While you're there, can you take the lady behind, just there with her hand up?
Hello? Is it on? Okay. I think that in general, as learners, whatever age, we have more in common than we are different. Of course, it's true that some learners enjoy hard working and memorizing, and other people enjoy something different, and fair enough. But why don't we look at those learners who are the best learners? Who are the best learners? Small children. They are the fastest learners we can look at. And do they enjoy learning? I don't know. They enjoy being challenged. But I don't think they would follow this discussion whether it's fun or it's not fun. They just enjoy being challenged. And I think we could learn much more if we would look at how children really learn and how fast they learn.
Okay, thank you for that. Yeah. Herman, down here. Yeah.
Thanks, Harold. I think, Patty, you touched something on my nerves with regard to when you spoke about timetables. Oh, really? One of those things.
I couldn't agree more.
But the one thing that switched it for me was when you said that percentages you can remember. Why? Because you had fun buying and shopping.
Okay, so what the research shows about that is that if it is personally meaningful to you, and that may be what you guys consider fun, and please understand that Alex and I both agree that learning should be fun when it can be fun, but it often isn't. That I think is both of our points. Personally meaningful means much better likelihood of being remembered and applied.
Okay. Do you want to come in on that? Because
Yeah, two quick things. I think the idea that some countries or people need to play catch up, I think that's a dangerous way of looking at it. I teach in a very privileged context. I'm in an international school that's well-resourced. And I think it's dangerous to say that, that because of that, those kids get to have fun, but people without that don't. That fun is some sort of extra thing you get if you're at a certain place. I think that without being a well-resourced school, there's many things people can do to care about the emotional well-being of students in school, and fun is part of that. As for the research part, yes, personally meaningful, but another big part of this is a lot of the research isn't a reliable source for what we're talking about, because as Young Zhao points out, it's like doing medical research without asking about side effects. So you get a trial saying that, you know, direct instruction versus something else, you get a test score raised in direct instruction, but you don't get a report on side effects such as it makes kids hate reading forever or something like that. So I think that this is part of what's missing in this conversation about research, is we're not asking those other questions about the emotional effects of different ways of teaching.
Okay, yeah, question down here, just behind the camera. Keep your hand up until the mic arrives.
Yeah, so I have this simple question that, you know, when we talk about fun, is it perceptual? Because, you know, in a different context, who do not understand the concept of fun in one region could be absolute fun in another region, right? So then when you look at, you know, globalization and making it more local, what are your researchers suggest that, do you take a blanket approach towards saying that, okay, this is how the fun is? Are you redefining what the purpose of the context was with fun as an element? Or are you, you know, repurposing it to the objectivity of who you are and what works for you as an individual, which is more personalized interaction that works for me. Let's say I'm stressed out, I don't need fun right now, but I need to get that math right, right? Versus when, oh, it was challenging and I perceive it to be fun because now I have overcome that. So what's your kind of a general feedback in terms of, you know, both parties of saying for the fun and not for fun, how would you engage the, you know, masses?
Okay, thanks for that. Before you sit down, can you just throw the microphone over to the other side there? Throw it. That's it. Well done. Right. Who wants to go first answering that question? Or do you want to do it in the summing up? No, it was a question. It's up to you. You want to comment now? Please do. Otherwise, okay, you don't. Let's move on. Another comment. Yeah, here. Third row down here.
Yeah, thank you. When I listened carefully to the discussion and also read this sentence, I came into some reflection on what's going on right now within this discussion. And I think it says this house believes all learning experience should be fun. If we look at what this house is, it's actually us designing or creating learning experiences. And the learning experience that we talk about are the learning experiences of others. So what's going on is that right now that we are leading a discussion, we as creators or instructors, on experiences or maybe lives of others, which is a good thing actually because it shows that we are responsible, that we take responsibility for that. But if we take it apart, these learning experiences probably are induced learning experiences, not all learning experiences, as the sentence says, because as we said, children learn all the way, people learn all the way, we learn all the way throughout our lives, and it cannot be fun all the time. So literally, it cannot be like it is written there in real life. I think we all agree. But the induced learning experience that we are responsible for, maybe they should be fun, maybe not. Interesting discussion. I want to make one point on that. I have a little daughter, and I went to a funeral with her not too much time ago, and she was really sad. And she asked me, what's going on now with the aunt that died? And I had to do a lot to explain that to her. And it was not fun, but it was really, really relevant for her. It was coping with something that touched her heart very, very deeply. And so I would say it was very relevant. It was partly induced. I mean, she started asking questions, but then I went through the whole topic of dying with her a bit deeper. So it was a kind of induced learning experience that was not fun, but really, really important. And what I like to suggest as an improvement maybe of that sentence, and then I'm really curious on your feedback on that, is that probably we believe that all induced learning experiences should serve the needs and the goals of the learners. Thank you. And that, of course, can be fun, right?
Well, thank you for that. If we had a lot more time, we could take that as an amendment and debate that separately, but we don't, so we can't, unfortunately. There was a lady just behind you there. Yeah. That's it.
Thank you. I wanted, what I notice, and correct me if I'm wrong, that we're still slipping into this perception of fun as haha, and my life is intertwined with education in so many ways. And over the past 2 years, I changed career and I changed 2 countries. But I always have been very close to education, and I come from very academic background, and then I changed. Now I'm working corporate sector as a learning designer. So, oh my God, all the learning experiences over the past 2 years were not haha fun. But when I look back, and I'm so excited to be here today and be part of this discussion, and I would like to express how much I agree with perception of fun as being an aha moment. And speaking about personal relevance, when something becomes personally relevant, it is becoming fun, it is becoming aha. The trouble with schools and higher education as well, where I worked, and I'm from Russia, so I worked at one of the top universities in Russia, teaching English as a foreign language. When we talk about how much fun and engagement we should put into learning, I think as much as I'm advocating about everything we're going through in life as being a fun experience and a learning experience, I think we need still to have this diversion between education at school, education at higher education, and education in the workplace. And this is going to be different kind of fun. And the trouble with higher and particularly school education is that it's very difficult to make it relevant to the context in which children and teenagers find themselves every day. So what I think fun means is how do we marry the, in higher and school education, how do we marry the everyday context with our purpose? Because eventually we want to make them learn things for exams, because we need to make sure they're all on the same page when they enter workforce. And when we talk about workforce, here fun and engagement becomes a very different notion, because we need to grasp people's attention and we need to make them interested in our subject. So 2 things. I think that fun is very much about haha, but we need to differentiate this fun according to the context, what people do, when they do it, how they do it, what age they are, etc., and that's what makes us very relevant, regardless of what sphere we are. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Can I just get an idea of how many more questions or comments there are? Yeah, quite a few, because we're running out of time. So I'm going to take a few together and then ask to reply in the summing up. Yes, in the front row, here. Sally Ann, yeah.
Hi, I'm Sally Ann Moore. I'm part of the organising team here. I'm responsible for an event in France, but I do a lot of consulting on learning. I just wanted to add a couple of points. I agree with both sides, to start. Patty, you said something important about the experience. I find things that have worked, and I wanted to share with you 2 things that worked and 2 things I've learned. One addresses Eliot. When the only thing you have in your hand is a hammer, everything starts to look like a nail. I see that all the time in the classroom. Be that hammer, PowerPoint or virtual reality or whatever. I've actually started to dispense with classical learning techniques altogether. I found that what you measure is what you get, okay? So that's the Hawthorne effect. If you measure something, you'll get it. So what I've done with some of my classes, I say to people, I want you to teach this subject in X amount of time. And something fairly fantastic happens now. By hook or by crook, they will get themselves through their peers, through me, through the Google, through anything they get their hands on, they will get to that standard because they're going to be judged by their peers. And I'm going to have them teach pivot tables or Novocaine injections next week or next month. And that works. So I just wanted to share that. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, just in the fourth row here. Yeah.
Tarkan Gürbüz from Middle East Technical University in Ankara, Turkey. Thank you. This is really nice debate. And in this debate, there's nothing wrong with fun. And nobody will be against if the fun is provided. Here, the problematic is learning itself. Learning experiences, if they are providing fun, that's okay. But learning experiences usually, as Patty mentioned about, they don't provide fun. Here, the question is, how about the providers? What are the providers? Either the teacher, the learning environment, the school environment, the family, or the curriculum itself. If you deal with the curriculum and find a way of, because today we have the technology, we have the solutions, so we can come up with different types of curriculum which are more flexible for the learners, and then we will see that learners, they will provide fun for themselves. That's what I believe. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Can you just pass the microphone along the row to the lady there? Just pass it along there, or throw it if you prefer. That's it.
Hello. I feel like something that might have been missing so far is the concept of, and I'd argue the thrill of mastery of a subject. So I'm thinking kind of predominantly about online gamers who invest hundreds of hours in what they do, in engagement that we could probably only dream of in our industry, honing their craft and making kind of tangible efforts to level up and hone their skills. And I felt like Alex and Patty, I agreed with a lot of your points, but at some points I felt that you were saying that hard work is always oppositional to fun. And when we think of people like gamers, is that not hard work in the name of fun?
Okay,
Good
thank
point.
you for that. I'm going to take 3 more, I think, because we're running out of time. So let's move over to this side. At the back of this front block there. Yeah, the person with their hands up there. That's it.
I'm a student right now, and I would like to differentiate between fun that we are sort of forced to education that we are forced to partake in, and education that is our own choice, because I think learning about topics that we'd like to learn about, but where there are aspects of course that aren't fun, like with a speed skater who has to wake up every morning at 3 a.m. They have fun doing it because they have an enthusiasm for it and they want to do it. The difference is when you have to wake up every morning to partake in school education, where you've got topics that you don't necessarily want to do, you want to sort of, it's best for the teachers or the educators to induce fun in what you're doing, so you have enthusiasm. So one's you want to do it and you will do it no matter what it takes, and the others you have to do it, so why not make it as fun as possible?
Okay, thank you very much for that, Maxime. And you're still learning at school, I think, so that was
Yes,
a comment from the coal face, as it were. So thank you very much for that. Can you just throw it over to the gentleman down there? That's it.
Thank you. I'm Mark West. I'm from UNESCO. I just wanted to quickly look at the antonym of fun. That would be sad, hard, difficult. And we certainly don't want learning to be that. I just wanted to add, Benjamin made some very cogent remarks, but I see that bad teaching and non-inclusive education often hides behind the idea of difficult, hard. That why did all the students not learn to read? Because it's hard. Why did so many students not pass the class? Because it's hard. So I think that when we look at this affirmation as aspirational, we should strive for learning to be fun. It won't always be fun, but we should strive for it to be fun, and that will make learning more inclusive. Too often, learning is inclusive because it is considered to be hard. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. Time for one more comment. Yes, on the end here.
Hi, looking to the motion. Well, this House believes that all learning experience should be fun. It seems that both sides agree on it should be fun where it can be. This House is a set of educators, so we're still failing to do that all learning can be fun. Fully agreed on that. Still, at the moment, it is not all of that be fun. But it can be fun, so it should be fun. And we all have agreed on that it shouldn't be sad and hard and all that stuff. So learning should be fun, and both sides agree on that. So let's make it happen here. Thanks.
Okay, thank you for that, and thank you all for your contributions. I'm now going to ask one speaker from either side to sum up their arguments, but before I do that, I've just been passed a very important message. I have a piece of paper, as they say, and this message, I told you this was all about fun. This message is very important. It says, please mention a networking drink for all at 1900 hours in the Marlene Bar. Free. So free drink for everyone at 1900 hours. I think that it's ambiguous. I may have got that completely wrong. It may just have been the speakers, but I think it applies to everyone. So if I've got it wrong, then it's why you've got to be very, very careful in drafting these things, I think. But anyway, so I'm now going to call on Alex to speak, to sum up against the motion.
So I think that you should all oppose the motion that this House believes that all learning experiences should be fun. And I think the reason you should oppose it is because it's obvious. Each of us has our own experiences of learning, and each of us knows that not all of those experiences have always been fun. I think some of the most fruitful learning experiences we have don't come out of fun. They do come out of sadness and difficulty. And before I go further into this, I'd like to say that the school system, I would like to see the way that we educate kids. Kids should associate learning with having fun. School should be a place of joy and creativity. As I went around the world on my journey, that's what I was convinced of. We should have schools where kids are as free and as happy as they seem to be in primary schools in Finland. We should also have schools where kids are learning as much content knowledge as they seem to be doing in Shanghai, or are learning to use technology like they're doing at amazing schools like High Tech High in San Diego, where kids do project-based learning alongside their more traditional subjects and are developing their capacities of teamwork and self-motivation and a sense of purpose. But I don't think that that means that all learning experiences should be fun, and I think that's the crucial point here. So we talked about this idea of, I'll come back to this question of personal experiences of fun. Now, I think I was interested that you turned towards us at that point to see if we had a response, but I feel like either side of the argument could have responded there. Like imposing the idea that we should all be having fun, or saying that we shouldn't always all be having fun. Of course, we're making value judgments about our own interpretation of that. But on the one hand, you seem to be saying that perhaps people find fun certain ways of doing things that we don't assume to be fun. Well, what if people also don't find to be fun things that we do assume to be fun? That it works from both sides. It's a relativistic argument. And I think that this idea that all learning experiences should be fun has a certain tyranny in it, as though all people should always be having fun at every moment. Well, what if my life is motivated by something else? What if I'm motivated by a different purpose, by wanting to achieve greatness, or by wanting to do good, or by wanting to do other things? What if I don't want to have a life that's defined by fun? I think we should allow for that. If you want to have fun, great. And that means that learning experiences can be fun. Of course they can be. But if you don't want them to be, they don't have to be. So there's this question of all learning experiences again. Secondly, I love the point about the thrill of mastery. I think this is a really important point. I love the Seymour Papert idea of hard fun as well. I think that's a great way of putting it. But the point of hard fun is like, it's when you get to the end, it's the thrill of the mastery. And in that moment, yes, you're enjoying some parts of that process. I think some kids especially really enjoy challenge. But I think that also in that process you have moments of difficulty and failure and self-doubt. And I don't think that all of those moments are always all fun. I think that you experience the fun at the end, but I don't think that that means all learning experiences are always fun. And then finally, I think there was this other question that you brought up there about the topics that you want to do, the topics that you need to do in school. And I think this is a really difficult problem for us as educators and people that think about learning. And I think it's difficult because in an ideal world, everybody would be free to learn and do whatever they wanted. So you could pursue the things that you found fun, go off and do them. If you don't want to learn to spell, don't learn to spell. If you don't want to learn to read, don't learn to read. If you want to pursue kind of some particular activity, you can do that. That would be a world in which people were having fun all the time. But then the fun, I think, that people would be having in the learning experiences in that situation would undermine this idea of the big fun you could get to through the thrill of mastery at the end. And so I think that we have to understand that maybe there are some things which aren't always going to be fun to learn, and maybe you need some other support or help to be motivated to do those, whether it is learning to read or learning to spell. Like some of these second-order bits of knowledge which don't come naturally to us as humans, which are to do with our acquiring tools that we have created. And some of those you need to live happily, healthily, and to have fun in society. And so I think that the key point here is, and why you should oppose the motion, of course, kids should associate learning with fun. Of course, schools should be joyful places. But I don't think it's possible, and I think we know this each from our experience. It's not possible that every single learning experience that we have can be fun. Thank you.
Thank you. Right, I now call on Eliot Maisy to sum up for the motion.
We, as learning producers, should not live in a world of serious, somber, this is learning. I went to India and sat with 27 e-learning developers from 16 companies. And we went in a circle and they introduced themselves. And I asked them, what's your background? Music, English, theater, and like. We went all around the room. And I said, how come so much of the code that you develop is so boring? And they said, because that's what we thought the client wanted. I don't want myself, my colleagues, kids, to arrive at a place where the default design behavior is seriousness. There are headmasters who will criticize a teacher because there's too much laughter coming from that classroom. Fun does not mean laughter, but fun means at the end of the day we are living in the age of curation. There are 1,000 things that our learners could do. We want to make sure that the assets that are there, grab them, they see the value of it. Working with TED, they would say if in a 6-minute TED Talk now, we don't have that many minutes to grab them and to get them engaged in the storyline that touches them, gets them a smile and a tear and the like. Should every moment be fun? No. But should our default as learning professionals be to create an experience that people want to go and say, wow, this is awesome? And I would actually rise in opposition, that I would tell you that those skaters that are rolling around in South Korea practicing hard will tell you that it's the most fun career, the most fun life, the most fun moment. And I defer to wrap it up to my friend Benjamin.
It's a really, really quick comment. I think conferences designed for educators are one of the few places you could find takers for the anti-fun side. And I think that's a sad comment on the state of education.
Okay. Thank you very much for that, Eliot and Benjamin. And again, thank you to all our speakers and to all of you. So I'm now going to put this to the vote. So would all those who are in favour of the motion that this House believes all learning experiences should be fun, please raise their right hand. And all those against? I would say on that showing that the motion is defeated. Well, we can do it again if you want, but I think it was fairly clear.
I'll accept it.
All right. Thank you all very much indeed for your attention and for taking part in what has been an excellent debate. And let me remind you again that you're all invited to the Marlena Bar for a networking drink. Thank you very much, ladies.